Hello, friends. It is Thursday night, and I am trying something new. I'm going to try running these lives in the evening just to see if it's easier on some of you. I know that middle of the day is hard because people are working, life's happening, what have you. But we're going to try this at night and see if it's a little better on everybody. Just because I'd love to hold a conversation with you about different things. And so I'm trying to kind of tweak it and figure out where it's going to be best for you. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about parenting when you come from, let's just say, not the best past. Whether that has to do with who your parents are, or, the way that you were raised, or the choices you made when you were younger, whatever the case may be. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about what that means for you as a parent and what that means as far as who you have to be as a mom or as a dad. And so I wanted to take a few minutes and kind of talk about that a little bit. And I'm hoping the kids keep the dog contained because it seems like they're trying to get in here. Um, Before I start, though, I have to make you laugh a little bit. So my son, I took a shower a little bit ago, hence the wet hair. And I was in there for maybe 15 minutes. And my son bangs on the door and he's like, "Mom, you still in there?" Am I still in there? Did he think I hopped out the window? Or, like, I was just sitting there and I'm like, "I'm still here. Didn't go anywhere." I wonder what they think that happens in the shower. Anyway, all right. So, I've talked about this before, but for anybody who's new, I'll go ahead and address it again. Like, I come from a very broken past. I come from, my mom did her best, but she was raised by an abusive, mentally unstable person, and that left its damage on her. And so she did what she knew how to, and she gave me the best she knew how, but, it still wasn't what it could have been. You know what I mean? Just because she was kind of fighting her own broken legacy and she was fighting some of her own baggage. And then my dad was either not involved or trying not to throw shade. So we'll just say my dad wasn't the best and leave it at that. I learned a lot of things from him, but not things that would help me on my parenting journey in any way, shape, or form. Um, Things that I've had to work against, if you'll be real about it. But, and so I came from that. And then as a teenager, I made some really messed up choices. I mean, I've done drugs, I've drank, I've, run with the wrong crowd. I've had, mental health issues. I've been in treatment for, attempted suicide, anything along those lines. I've been there. And so when I say, coming from a past that's not necessarily glamorous, I'm not really speaking out of my depth here. Like, I really do come from a background, and a lot of people will tell you, if you come from the same, they'll tell you, your parenting legacy is only going to be what you came from. And so, you come from brokenness and that's where you have to be. And I'm here to tell you that it's completely false. Just because you had a parent who did XYZ, just because you made a certain choice in your past as a parent, doesn't mean that's who you are now, and that doesn't mean that that's what you're going to provide to your kids. And I think that that's so important for parents to get get a hold on, that, what you were or what your parents were doesn't define who you're going to be. Because I think that we have to kind of wrap our heads around that before we can move forward. So tonight I'm going to talk about a couple ways to kind of move past that, and a couple things that we need to do when it comes to mindset, when it comes to that kind of stuff. So first things first is you kind of have to be willing to, acknowledge those areas in your past that stunk. Those areas that didn't prepare you to be the kind of parent that you wanted to be. Whether that's, situations with parents or whatever the case may be, you kind of have to acknowledge those things, because we can't move past it and we can't overcome it if we're not willing to acknowledge it. And so the first step I would say is obviously take a few minutes and look at, what are those things that got in the way of your parenting legacy, that got in the way of you becoming the parent that you wanted to be. For me, there was a lot of anger and a lot of, aggression and a lot of distance and dismissiveness and just lack of availability when it came to my parents. And that's something that I didn't want to repeat. But I also had to acknowledge that it happened and that that was a part of my past. And then the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to seek help. If there's stuff where it's baggage that's going to limit you as a parent, you know, a lot of people will tell moms or dads even that you have to be the perfect parent right out the gate. And that's such a load of crap. I can't even. Nobody was made to be perfect. And if you're dealing with past stuff, don't feel like you're obligated to just wing it and push through. It's okay to reach out to someone and get a little bit of help and, you know, process some of what you went through, because it's a lot easier to rewrite a legacy and move forward if you're willing to first deal with the baggage of your own and first deal with those things that really hurt and really kind of messed you up. Because I know that when we first got married, Mike really struggled with anger. He really, really had an issue with anger because that was a lot of what he had seen growing up. And he had to kind of reach out to somebody and talk through some of that. And, you know, the simple act of reaching out and getting that little bit of help changed everything for us. And it gave him the freedom to be the parent that he really wanted to be. And for me, you know, I struggled a lot with postpartum depression, which fed right into depression. And, you know, that limited me as a mom. And I had to be strong enough to say, you know, I can't do this without seeking some help and without moving past, you know, that depression and working through some of that stuff. And so if you do have something like that, I want to challenge you, reach out and get some help. And, you know, don't feel like you have to face that alone. And then as far as, you know, moving forward with parenting, you kind of have to look at those things from your past that you've acknowledged, you know, and you have to say, okay, how does this impact me as a parent? You know, if I had an angry parent, if I had a dismissive parent, if I had, you know, an addict as a parent, whatever your backstory is, you know, how does that impact how you're going to parent? You know, and because I think that a lot of times we come into this parenting thing and we're like, okay, where's the manual? Where's the trick? Where's the spell it out for me? And that doesn't exist. And so the first thing we pull on is our past experience. Well, when you come from a background where the past experience isn't necessarily good, then you're sitting there going, okay, well, what do I do with this now? And so I think that by taking time and looking at, you know, how it's going to impact you as a parent, then you can reach out and say, look, you know, I don't have a frame of reference for this one. How am I going to handle this? You know, where's my boundary going to be? If I know that I came from an abusive home, for instance, then I'm going to set a limit on a certain type of punishment, or I'm not going to choose, you know, to spank. I might choose to go a different route. You know, if I come from a household where addiction was a dominant situation, maybe the best bet's going to be that, you know, no alcohol or no, you know, substances, drugs and such are going to be allowed in the home. That way there's not an issue, you know, presenting. And I think that, you know, taking that time and setting those boundaries before it becomes a problem is really what's going to give you the fuel to be able to kind of overcome some of what you were stuck with from the past and some of what, you know, may have happened either because of you or to you. And then I think that the other thing you have to do is you have to be open and honest with your partner, and you have to be open and honest with your kids. You know, you have to be willing to say, look, this is an area of weakness for me, and I'm sorry. The biggest thing that you will have to say if you come from a broken past, if you come from less than the best, is you will probably say sorry a lot, because the reality is you'll probably mess up. And the difference between messing up and failing is being willing to own your mistake and choose to move forward and do better. And so, you know, a lot of people tell you, well, oh, you know, I'm a failure as a mom because I did XYZ. You're not a failure as a mom because you did XYZ. It's only a failure if you stop, refuse to acknowledge, you know, if you don't acknowledge what you did wrong and you keep moving forward in that same bad choice. if you're willing to take the time and say, look, I'm sorry, I was wrong. This is an area where I'm learning, but I'm going to move forward and I'm going to be better, then that's not a failure. It's a learning moment. And you're going to have a lot of learning moments, but that doesn't mean that you're less of a parent, and it doesn't mean that you're less of a person. It just means you're working with a different set of tools. And, that's okay. As your kids get older, they're going to be able to communicate where they stand with you on things. And, depending on how you build that relationship with them, they're going to be able to say, look, Mom, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't like this. And then you'll be able to have a dialogue. Now, they may still be in the wrong because kids can be a complete pain sometimes. But, sometimes having that input of, Mom, I'm not liking the way that this is happening. You've hurt my feelings. Or, I don't want to be around that person because they're not healthy for me, or whatever the case may be. When you teach kids that they can communicate with you, if you come from a broken past, it protects both of you in the long run. Now, that said, don't burden your kids with your past. It's not their job to clean up where you came from, and it's not their job to fix that. I simply mean give them the self-awareness of, this is what's okay with me and this is what's not okay with me. Because I think that boundaries are a very healthy thing to start teaching kids young. But you start with the boundaries. You lead with boundaries, and you lead with what you will and will not accept as okay for you. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. It's not it. This is a conversation we could have for years, but for tonight, that's kind of where I'm going to leave it, and we'll pick the conversation up more next week. But feel free to let me know if you have questions, if, there's something else that you'd want me to discuss, if you want me to bring up something in a future live related to this or something else to do with parenting, go ahead and let me know, and I hope that you have a fantastic night.